Good day. My name is Dr. James Weldon, or Yogadhi, and this is the 10th episode in my second book on my autobiography entitled The Rise of the First World Teacher. And you may have noticed that sometimes these chapters are pretty long because this is actually part 4 of that chapter. I guess eventually when this is published as a separate book, I'll take care of that. So, I've just finished the completion of my second trip to India. By the way, I'm speaking from Heavenly Mountain Lodge and Community in Boone, North Carolina, which is a very large community dedicated to higher consciousness and personal growth. It's also the headquarters of the Art of Living Retreat Center, and I live nearby that in a house that actually I was given. My house is actually the original meditation center before this huge facility was built. If you get a chance to look at that online, Art of Living Retreat Center. It's really a great place, and it's, as far as I know, one of the biggest such facilities outside of India. It's intended someday to be a huge, great spiritual center, maybe like Rishikesh, a very high consciousness. Hey, Rihan, hope you're enjoying your travel around the world. And good to see your face joining me here. So let's talk about becoming part and connected of the big life so that the work that we may not realize that we need to do gets done. That's really what this is about. And this is the 10th episode in the second book, The Rise of the First World Teacher. And I want to pose a question to you. Are we really in control of our life? I know we think we are, but are we really? We think we control our body and our mind and know our own life. But really, this control that we think we have is completely an illusion. It's totally an illusion. Although I've been fortunate enough at this point to be with 3 very highly enlightened beings in my life, I really have and discovered here in this second work that there was really only one that was the master of my heart. And that master is not a person. That is not a person. But it's a manifestation, I think, of the divine life, the divine being. And through the guidance of my spiritual teacher, master, slowly I'm becoming a part of that energy. It's called the guru energy. Slowly this is happening, gradually. And in the last segment, basically, where I was about to become one of the first teachers of meditation in all of India that taught him. I was in the same class that Banu Diti, his sister, wonderful, wonderful person. And we're all in line to go in to become teachers of the meditation. It's called Sahaj Samadhi meditation. And as I walked in the door, I had already taught meditation, and there was a little ego. As we were walking in that door to receive the final part of the teaching, Sri Sri meets me and he says, "No, you're not ready yet." And closes the door in my face. Everybody went inside, and I was standing at the door in front of the Shakti Kutir, if you ever chance to go there, that little hut, out on the porch. By the way, I sat with him many nights in the early days with him there. And he said, "You're not ready yet." Closed the door on me. Slowly I'm beginning to understand that this force of grace is not an individual person. And it's manifested through the grace of a spiritual master. And slowly over time, and again, it's been a number of years here, some 25, 30 years now, at this part of my life, that energy is grinding down my weaknesses and is crushing, sometimes in a pleasant way, sometimes in a painful way, my mental limitations. And ultimately, this enlightened mind consciousness, which is not an individual, it's a force of nature, it's taking all of us gradually to a place which is far, far beyond any belief or imagination. And there is a name that this is talked about, in the sages in the past tried to give a description to that. One of the names is called 1,000-headed Purusha, the one that has limitless hands and legs and arms and is going in every direction. And this is a being or a life or a consciousness that sees everything, is actually doing everything, and is working out the perfection of the universe through us, one person at a time. I know this is hard to understand. So I was beginning to learn to communicate with that level of life without words. And this process was to be learned to be sensitive about the energies. Maybe you found sometimes in your life that you just found yourself doing the right thing. And there were synergies that brought you together and connected with people. People understand this because they all have it to a certain extent. My job at this point was to learn how to be sensitive to the movement of that energy flowing within me, and recognize that that force within us, as us, is also the spiritual teacher also. And this takes, certainly in my case, a lot of time, because all our small personal needs all the time are ensnaring us. I see it all the time with these thoughts. I have to accomplish this. I need a job. I need a place to live. And I even told it to Rehan. It seems like bigger retreat center. I had responsibilities on this extra center. All these things, actually, everything that we need are actually given to us. Part of the lesson is to see that regardless of what our needs are, everything will happen. Everything is happening, regardless of our thoughts. And then gradually this idea of having to do everything begins to dissolve. And then true freedom of being in the space where things are happening spontaneously. Doesn't mean laziness. This is not laziness. This is not inactivity. This is complete activity. And complete 100% being involved in your activity. But there's an inner state of innocence which is untouched in you. When we returned from these trips in India with Sri Sri, I'm always so absolutely inspired. And with this latest indication that this insight that I have about this saint that had passed away, his name was Swami Muktananda, that had shown me that I would meet him, and I actually met him there as a child. I'm not going to go all over it. You can listen to the earlier chapters and come back. We were encouraged to create a home for this knowledge in Colorado. And at this time, this is actually the time of the huge .com booms that are happening in the 90s. And I had a technology company that I'd launched. I started a company based upon several patenting inventions. Some I invented, some of my friends invented, but we're still in the development stage. When I entered into a creative agreement to exchange some interest in the property, this is the .com boom time, when all the .coms are going crazy. I entered into an agreement for $1 million property in Boulder that I'm thinking might be the center. And I believed that possibly this was the place a place that I envisioned many years ago. And so we move into this property as renters until my company completes the next round of financing. And certainly, certain requirements need to be done the final year to finalize this transaction, raising money. And during this year, we hold many small events there. Actually started operating the center there, and 3 big events. It include a large Art of Living course, 1 week, and actually a big advanced course, one of the silence courses, the next week. And finally, another new course which was called Creating the Divine, DSN course, with a teacher from India, the next weekend. So right 3 weeks in a row, we did this. And several months earlier during June, at the celebration, Sri asked us to come once more to India. And as we waited in line to meet him at this event, he says, "Oh, Yogadhi, I have something for you to do in India. Come over this next November in Navaratri. And the project will be in the north. It's in an area called Assam in India." So as we finished these 3 big courses, back to back, kind of fulfilled our dreams. It was sweet, Of course, I said they were big, and they were a lot smaller than, of course, things that are happening now in the world. I got the fulfillment of launching the center, and apparently the purchase is going to happen. And I prepared that even if we can't trade stock in my company, he wants stock in my company. I actually was going to bet the farm. Okay, I was willing to risk everything I have to kind of follow this insight. And I felt very strongly for years that I would be creating such a big center. It was big to me. It was like 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. I thought that was big at the time. With high hopes. The day after these 3 courses, we take off and we arrive again in India for another big celebration called Navaratri, really a great holiday, celebrating the life force. So this was a very special event because Sri's mother actually recently passed away, and only those specifically invited were invited to come. It was actually not like it is today where hundreds of thousands of people come. It was a very small course. And, national and international attendance was completely discouraged. So I realized it would be a very kind of private event. And so by this time, Sri is commonly drawing crowds in the hundreds of thousands in India. So how they did this to say, don't come, somehow they did it. And we see how small our gathering is really going to be. I've come to respect these annual celebrations, these Navaratri celebrations, as really incredibly powerful events, truly with cosmic significance. Because the energy there was, for me, unbelievable. And over the years, I'd actually seen many kind of really miraculous things happen around Sri. Some things, actually, I haven't talked about in this book. I've laid it all out about my experiences. Okay, so mostly, 95%. There are a few things that difficult to boggle to think about here. So during these specific celebrations called Navaratri, the most powerful things often happened. And I'd seen young children of 5 or 6 years old literally sitting transfixed with their eyes closed for 5 or 6 hours, entranced in meditation. They never knew meditation. And I see really major healings are so common sometimes at these events, they're almost ignored. And as over the years, my kind of subtle insight perception has grown. I've seen, there is another level to this life. There is a subtle universe. And quite honestly, no kudos to me. Doesn't matter, because this is the reality. There really are thousands of subtler beings that could actually arrive as well for some of these events. And over the years, this this perception has grown so much that suddenly now it's coming up everywhere. And, the energy that I'm feeling is difficult to describe. Few realize that there's a very powerful and very ancient technology, I'm talking about a technology, for invoking the manifestation of spiritual energy on a global scale. The expertise for manifesting and helping manifest these cosmic forces have been passed down from teacher to students literally for thousands of years. And the practices are not available anywhere else. In fact, the complicated technologies that perform these particular, called yagyas or ceremonies, take an entire team, sometimes including hundreds of individuals to complete. And Sri Sri told me that nobody knows how to do it all, that each pundit or priest knows his part. One directs the show, and about 15 other pundits complete different parts. And he tells me once, nobody can do it all on their own. Just imagine, kind of think of it this way. Imagine you want to see the President of the United States. First of all, you have to speak with the secretary, then the department head. Next, you might meet with a senator, and then a cabinet head, and perhaps ultimately the Secretary of State for the whole country. And after all of these steps, you get to have an audience with the President of the United States. What happens during these 9 special days of Navaratri is much like that. Certain cosmic forces are invoked through the sounds, through the chanting and the fire ceremonies all this week long. And gradually the energy builds up over these 9 days with a climax at the end, at least I found, is impossible to describe. During these times, these subtle realities are manifesting for anyone to feel, experience, and possibly even see if there's some subtle sight available. So there's a different direct seeing. The overall effect basically is manifesting such forces, touches the entire world. And I actually have some videos of this occurring during Navaratri, private things. And during this time, the energy manifests fully. It's kind of like watching a thunderstorm collect. This is how it appeared to me. Imagine watching, a vast thunderstorm gathering about the sky over your head. And first the sky darkens and the clouds grow, and the next swirling clouds and whipping winds begin. And then the rain begins to fall, along with occasional flashes of lightning from cloud to cloud. And then finally the rain begins to pelt down in a deluge. And huge bolts of lightning whoosh, come down, striking the ground around you. This year's event is held outdoors in a tent that holds, there were still thousands of people there. This is a small event. Only about 30,000 people attended. And they had the fire pit, and and the pundits over the 9 days are offering many varieties of herbs and curds and butter, clarified butter. And there's special words are used that invoke the divine presence. And day by day, the energy builds. And at least from my point of view, many subtle forces, collect beings, if you will, show up. And apparently they're attracted by the love that's invoked. And they're fed, if you will, by the subtle essences of the offerings. And gradually the energy builds to such a spiritual energy. To me, it appears like a physical thunderstorm. And out of this thunderstorm comes lightning bolts down that arc down and strike the earth. And because of the practices and meditations and the concentration of love that grows there day after day, that energy is being evoked. So that even more subtle forms arrive, if you will. You know, who could believe that offerings, when they're offered like this, that when they turn into the fire, that subtle cosmic forces would come and partake of them? But this is true. When the right sounds are sung and the right mantras, which one person knows, one individual can spend his entire life learning part of it. This is true. This is true. And this is the first time that I'm seeing this clearly. And you know, before this, many times I felt these energies. Sometimes I would see maybe flashes, but at this event, for the first time, I found myself looking up above our heads and seeing this in the sky. You know, it kind of reminds me of an experience that I had in 1994 when my friends and I are in my hometown in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I gave my first lecture, and I look up when we're speaking, and I see a subtle being, and he throws a bolt of energy, and we were actually paralyzed, knocked down by that energy. So this was some years back, kind of, you know, obviously a much faster version of that. And during these events, you know, I watch and feel these forces collect, and I kind of imagine the Sistine Chapel. You know, in the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo paints these little angelic beings looking down from the sky. You know what I'm talking about? And actually, the sign for my retreat center is a picture of that Sistine Chapel of the reaching out. And it's like that. You know, and as the fires burn in the fire pits, the forms of these herbs rise like smoke. And it appears that, you know, it's a feast, if you will. And all kinds of things are given, you know, baskets of 108 different herbs, even a beautiful sari at the end. And, you know, and as the fire burns, it appears that the subtle forms of these herbs rise up. You might think for a moment, you know, what happens when you pass? Well, you may rise up too. I think you will, you know, in all kinds of special things. And as the offerings and prayers go up, it's as if the grace is coming down and manifests sometimes. You know, and as I'm watching Sri, sometimes he's swooning in a state of ecstasy. I don't know if any of you have seen this. It's really something to see. And it's obvious to me and many others that the same energy rising this way is moving him like it's moving me to a bit. And I think of the passing of Sri's mother and remember her delicate care for Rama and me many years back in their small house. Sri's mother, in the second trip, I remember a Navaratri event. So during this particular satsang, suddenly Sri starts moving up and down and rapidly in the seat, and the vibrations and the spiritual energy that radiates from him are actually unbelievably incredible. And it's kind of like streaks of light that you might see from the rising sun. The sun comes up, the sun goes out. It's like that. This is what I'm seeing. And everybody is just absolutely awestruck. And remember, the children are they can't move. You know, and his mother comes over to him at that time, earlier when this was happening, earlier Navaratris, and he says, "Are you okay?" You know, and he says to us later, you know, if you could have the elephant, there's a specific divine being called Ganesh. And he says, if you could have that Ganesh come and kind of occupy your little space, that what it would be like. And this is depicted as a spiritual being in an elephant form. If an elephant comes and tries to occupy the smaller body of a human being, what would it be like? And I think literally this is what happens. that we are obviously connected to the whole of the universe, and that there are subtle divine forms in the universe, and our world really is a speck in space. And we're seeing this. Sometimes when the energy comes up, Sri Sri's hand would go up above his head and would shake like this, as if an electrical current was passing through him. And during one of these times, this was happening. I realized that these bolts of energy really come down into the space. And I experienced this in a milder form many times before. Riding behind him in the car. In an earlier chapter, I talked about this energy flowing. And I felt these currents come. And this evening, as I'm watching him along with 20,000 people, I suddenly feel a connection with him in a very, very strong way. And suddenly a bolt of this energy begins to flow through him. And I feel it too. And I'm sitting on the side of the room about 30 feet from him. And when that energy, literally a bolt, like a bolt of lightning, comes down, it hits me too. And I'm completely knocked off the chair onto the floor. I mean, literally, it just, I'm on the floor, and I'm gone, erased, into that big consciousness for about 15 minutes. I'm totally gone. Just like what might happen if you were to grab a live overhead electrical line and whack, it knocks you to the floor. I wake later to find myself on the floor, and in that moment, it happens. It completely throws me off the chair onto the ground, and I'm transfixed in a consciousness of infinity. The awareness that comes is really impossible to describe, except to say that I'm merging with the divine and lose all trace of individuality. In that time, we enjoy a kind of a unity without any separation at all. And these are real things, honestly. Really the experiences don't matter, but it's important for you to understand that these are possibilities for life. And there's this kind of grace and love in the universe. So after this event, after it's over, we meet about 20 minutes with the other international teachers, and Sri Sri talks about this time. And I actually have my video camera with me, and I'm recording this conversation. And I'm asking him, and I said, Guruji, when this energy comes down, it's so amazing. And that happened to me too. And Sri Sri looks at me and he says, how is it? And others reply, amazing, beyond words. And he laughs and says, it's a charge, isn't it? It's so heavy, it's like putting your hand into the socket. And I say, yes, exactly. And he elaborates while holding up his hand in the air, and it's like putting your hand in the socket, and it gets stuck there. I say, right. And I said, I was knocked off my chair and go out for some time. And he says, during that time, so much electricity is generated. And he says to do this is a whole amazing science. You don't find this happening at all anywhere, even in India. Very, very few families are left that can do these events, that have the knowledge. This is why I asked them to start a school here. And they bring the children and start the school here so that for at least for the next several generations, we can continue this knowledge. Otherwise, no one will be able to teach and encourage the children. And I say, if it takes many years it takes many years to learn how to do these events. Even if someone has to learn anew how to do all of them, it will take 500 years if one person wanted to learn it all. So what they do is they split it up into different people to learn different sections of it. One person knows how to all put it together to do the whole, what's called the yagya ceremony. That person doesn't know everything. He knows only how to put it together. They all work up to about 2 o'clock in the morning every day. It's quite a lot of work, he says, the preparation. At least we save the knowledge from disappearing. So it passes from the master to the student. And he turned and he looks at, do you also have some electric current? He asked. Sri asked the group, and almost everyone in the group says yes. He says, yes, there is a very, very strong current. And he says, some of you lost your shoes. Everyone burst out in laughter. And I replied, it's so amazing. You know, Rama and my wife, I'm telling him, my wife lost her shoes. About a half lost their shoes. There were so many people coming and going at the Yagya hall. And she found them again 4 days later, about a half a mile away at the Ayurvedic Health Center. You know, we found her shoes recently, I'm telling you. We all, we laughed for some time about the shoes. And I say, it's amazing for him to bring this really small concern of ours up at the time. So we're talking about this great energy, and he's talking about, you lost your shoes. And I say again, you know, Rama lost her shoes at the main Montop, and we found that in the Ayurvedic Center half a mile away. As we walked out of that center. They're not there when we enter, yet they appear as if by magic when we leave. They're right by the door. And Sri Sri is continuing. What happens here, you can't understand intellectually. Don't try to understand this intellectually. You know, wave after wave of energy comes. People used to have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning just to save their space in the home. And that was the small hall that we did in the past. This was a place where I had that experience of the transparent ceiling, where I apparently met the reincarnated Saint Swami Muktananda, and where last year I didn't talk about this actually, thousands of people, more people that could fill the hall. I had an experience the year before that there was no room in the hall, absolutely no room. It was absolutely packed, and you know, I went out and there was nobody outside, and I went to Sri Sri after the event. These are amazing things, but this is honestly true. And there was nobody outside. I couldn't believe it, and I went back inside. There was no room inside. It was completely full. I mean, as tight as you can get. Yet more people started coming in. And after the event, I went to Sri Sri and I said, I don't understand. How did it happen? There was nobody outside. And he says, oh, Yogadhi, you were the only person that noticed that. So something happened where he made the space bigger. I don't know. But I'm telling you, there's no way that all those people could get in that little small hall. And if you ever go to the International Center in Bangalore, go up to that small lecture hall in the old campus. Now it's got a floor, and you know, just think of maybe I don't know how many thousands of people in there. Okay. He said this year I think we'll do it outside. Even that place is too small. We estimated on the last day 50,000 people attended that event. So people came anyway. And I responded, you know, there's a huge electric currents coming down. Guruji says, he asked me, is it painful? Because it could be painful. I said, no, it's not painful at all. Just tears of bliss coming, just bliss and compassion. It feels really good, he says, and he puts his hand on the crown of his head. And he says, at the end of the Navara, all this energy collects in several pots of water. They actually collect it in these pots. And the charged water is then actually poured over Sri Sri's head. And Daniel, a friend of mine, is saying to everyone, it looks like the most amazing shower you could take. So all of this life force energy collects and then it's poured. And I remember just a few minutes back, we were sitting in the hall at the climax of that celebration, and the priest unveils the pots of water, and you know, that were actually buried in flowers before that. With great ceremony, the central pot is lifted onto the head of the priest's head, and the entire routine goes around, make the round the fire pit a number of times. And the energy invoked at that moment is impossible to describe. It's actually said at that moment that the full power of the Divine Mother, that's what the celebration, it appears. And all I can say is this is actually true. And immense rays of energy are arcing off from that procession. And all these subtle things that, that I'm describing are all present. And as the procession increases, the pot gradually, this pot apparently increases its weight. And this energy rises. And after, several times around, the priest can't actually hold it up anymore. And he collapses from the weight. I don't know how it happens. And assistants run up to help him. And after a few moments, a chair is brought to the stage, and all that energy, it's poured on his head. This is wonderful. And at the same time that this water is flowing, huge amounts of blessings. He makes a tour around all of these thousands of people. At this point, pots of water, he's just throwing it out. They collect the water that is touching everybody. And Ram and I are sprinkled as well, but as a drop splashes on my face, it's like burning. It's like fire, and it's like being hit with a coal almost. And my mind returns to the meeting room where Sri, I'm remembering this. And he says, this water is like mercury. It's so heavy. And when it's poured, it's not like water. It's more than water. All the charge and the voltage comes with it. And someone asked Sri, are you able to sleep, Guruji? He replies, some people are not able to sleep. They may go a little bit too high. We want everybody to be normal. He says, he asked us, did we dance? Of course, we all dance crazy. And somebody asked about his father. It says, his father, is he okay? And his father actually collapsed during an intense period. And this is a kind of, in a sense, what had happened to me. I collapsed. I was in a chair, but when I was hit by that bolt of electricity. Just take all of this with a grain of salt, my dear friends. I'm just trying to be honest about that there's a lot more to life than we think. It doesn't matter really, but we're inviting you to join in this celebration that there's a lot more about life that we really don't know. And and at the end of that, after all of this happens, if it actually rains as well, it's considered very successful. Of course, at that moment, just on that spot where all of this, it actually rained. And Sri Sri's asking us if we saw that. And this is exactly what happened. Everyone sees that as the priest was making his way around the fire ceremony, it becomes increasingly difficult for him to go around. And the weight, if you will, of this pot becomes heavy. You can feel him. He could hardly do it. He was kind of slowly sliding down. And the energy in the tin is becoming stronger and stronger. And after the third trip, the priest faints, but not before several helpers come to prevent them. And when we started that morning, it was completely clear sky and the winds were completely still through this time. And as I watch at the end, this wind rushes through the hall with these 40,000 people watching. I've never seen a wind like this before. And what's so remarkable is that it enters the tent from all sides. It just comes in. And I wasn't used to seeing the wind blow like this. It was quite unique, And then it rained. Immediately it rained on the spot where the tent stands, and several hundred feet away from the tent, it's dry. It's completely dry. Honestly. So I think I'll end this segment now, but the next segment is going to tell you about what happened. Several days after the event, actually, things are collapsing in the United States. This is the dot-com boom, if you remember. there was a boom, and then there was a huge crash. The whole culture went down. And here I'm stretching myself to buy this new place and so forth. So what happens? Actually, what happens is Sri Sri makes us homeless. He makes us homeless. And I'll tell you in the next segment. And we'll let you go for today. We'll keep you enthralled. And so, again, all of this will be available on my Facebook. And I encourage you to invite your friends to begin to listen to some of that. It's not easy to jump in the middle of this and understand what's going on. So just take it step by step. If it doesn't make any sense at all, that's okay. It's not a requirement. But the whole point of this is that I am trying to share to help provide a bridge in the understanding between the different cultures in this world. You know, this is not the wisdom of India. It's the wisdom of life. It's the wisdom of consciousness. It's a description of what can be some of the stages that we pass through. And although many, people have written wonderful things in all parts of the world, to my total surprise, and honestly I say this, to my own total surprise, nobody shared before, as far as I can tell, like this. And to give people a clearer understanding of what the possibilities are for life, and just to have faith that, this world is full of great and wonderful love and great consciousness and great beings. And we're all collected here, each trying to do our own unique job in helping to bring this in. And my prayers and wishes is that every single person in this world will benefit from this. This event that I just talked about benefited the whole world, because the power that's manifested there literally goes out around the globe and helps take the tears and the sorrow out of many, many millions and millions and millions of hearts. So there is a technology, a methodology to clear the minds, just like this is like a meditation, if you will, a bath of love for the whole world. And I'm just sharing my story in that. And of course, this is only my story. This is my autobiography, sharing of how I saw it. And I promised myself when I first started that I would lay it out truthfully, honestly, and just share this. And of course, I know there's not millions of people watching this in another way. That's kind of great. Actually, I prefer that. But I want to give a record of this, so the world will know, that it is loved, and every single person is a precious part of this. And we have two things we need to do. We need to deepen our own inner experience so that we can begin to be connected more directly to this, that it guides and directs our life. And number one, we need to do good works in the world, sharing this, helping the world, bringing whatever we are intended to bring into the world. And I wish the best for all of you to do that. So thank you very, very much for spending these few minutes with me. This is Dr. Weldon Yogadhi speaking from you from Heavenly Mountain in Boone, North Carolina. And namaste. That is a word which says, I bow to the divine in you. And again, these words, Jai Gurudev means, may that force be victorious in your life as well. Bye-bye. Until we talk again next week, Tuesday and Thursday.